our current music industry even exists. Such was the extent of their incredible popularity. Luckily, the music will last forever, and in the case of the late John Lennon, lives on through his son Julian, who began his own career in the early 80s, establishing himself as a talented songwriter and musician with his first hugely successful album, The Lot. Since then, Julian has gone through several image changes, from raw rocker to the more sophisticated feel of his latest album, Mr. Jordan, and his latest hit, Now You're in Heaven. Julian is currently travelling the world on a promotional tour that few rock stars ever attempt. His last 2 weeks in Australia have included an exhaustive series of interviews on radio and television, as well as dozens of personal appearances at record stores and shopping centres. So when it was finally our turn to catch up with the busy Mr. Lennon, the first thing I had to ask was whether or not constantly giving interviews is just part of the job, or does he sometimes get a bit sick of it?
It is, and no, I don't really. You know, in one way it's good to give the fans a chance to see how you actually are, or how you actually sound like, whether it be TV or radio, you know. It gives them pretty much the closest thing they'll get to, unless that you actually get to meet them on the street or at a gig, you know. And I find it a pleasure to come and say thank you, and thanks for the support, and glad that you enjoyed the album, you know.
But is all that attention very different for you, though? It seems like to me that you were famous from the time you were born. Is that difficult?
It's been an interesting life. Yeah, I've sort of been noticed since I was a kid, you know. All of Dad's fans used to hang around the house, you know, hang around the gate of the house, and whenever I used to walk in and out from school, you know, it was interesting, you know, because I'd be there trying to sign an autograph when I was like 3 or 4 years old. A little tough, you know, and taking pictures of that age. So I'm kind of used to it, you know. I don't mind it. I don't know any differently, you know, I really don't. So I've sort of grown up with it throughout my life. It's been interesting.
From what you remember, did the kids at school treat you any differently because of your name?
Yeah, well, what happened at school was that whenever I go to a new school, the headmaster of the school, in assembly, when we first started the first day, would say, "And today in school we have somebody new in class. Please stand up," you know, and they'd say who I was. And after that, it was a little difficult finding friends, you know.
Well, with that, on top of the fact that it sounds as if you went to a few different schools, do you think you had a normal school life?
As far as the work was concerned, yeah. And when I did have those friends, it was okay. Yeah, it wasn't too bad. As long as I sort of showed or proved that I was one of the lads, you know, which is what I was anyway. But I felt I had to show that or do something so that people would accept me as being just a regular kid, you know, or a regular guy.
How aware were you of how famous your father and all his friends really were?
Well, I mean, the first stages, again, were when I was 3, 4, 5, and there would be thousands of fans outside the front gate of the house, and going to school talking about that, you know, to other little friends at that point in time. I sort of discovered that nobody else had tons of people hanging outside their house every day and giving them toys and presents, and so I was kind of aware that something was a little different.
Well, obviously, you must have grown up in a musical environment. Did you always know that that was going to be your career?
Well, I'd always been interested in music, but I had other things that I was interested in too, like art. I used to paint, sketch, draw, sculpt. So there were other things that I was interested in. But as soon as I discovered that I could compose and put music together and lyrics, and how other people were affected by that, or how they liked or disliked it, then there wasn't any turning back.
Being at the top of the musical tree before you even start might sound easy, but Julian's songwriting has been influenced by a surprising number of familiar and not so well-known rock groups and artists.
Led Zeppelin, AC/DC,
An Australian band.
And many others, Sting, I mean the Police, as well as the Beatles, Steely Dan, the Doobie Brothers, Keith Jarrett.
big record collection then.
And many more.
Have you heard any bands, Australian bands, while you've been here that you were impressed with?
Crowded House. I used to hear them over when I was in America quite a lot, so I definitely am a big fan of theirs.
Well, I don't know how these would go in your suitcase, but we've been to the store and we picked up a few recent Australian albums, and we thought if you could take them back with you and have a listen to them.
Well, thank you.
You might enjoy them.
Thank you.
The Black Sorrows, Johnny Diesel and the Injectors, and 1927.
I will definitely give them a listen. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Hopefully, the best of our Australian albums would go alongside his own Mr. Jordan, which has not only taken Julian in a new direction, but once again proven that no matter how hard he tries, he can't escape the parallels of his music to others, especially his famous father. Well, everyone seems to be comparing your music to your dad's, but what about the one person whose opinion you'd probably value the most? What do you think John Lennon would think of your music?
I think he'd be proud of what I did, what I've done, you know. I think, well, he might be watching up there. I think he'd say I'd done a good job, you know, and I'm going to keep on doing it till I can't do it anymore, which will be many, many years.
With that, our interview was over, but with another engagement to meet, Julian wasted no time heading for the limo, even if it was all catching up with him.
Afternoon, morning, whatever time of day it is.
Outside, a group of dedicated fans had been waiting for a glimpse of their hero, and it wasn't long before they had their chance to find out if the long wait had all been worthwhile as they stormed towards the car. And, okay, so even I got a little bit carried away. I thought they wanted my autograph. Well, even Julian Lennon gets tired sometimes, and after signing everything from school bags to handkerchiefs, he was finally on his way, much to the dismay of some of the younger members of the crowd. But the excitement wasn't about to die down yet.